Blog Talk Radio. Hi, and welcome to the Universal Awareness radio show. My name's Linda Joslin, and I'm your host for today's show. Finally, Winston Shrout and I tried to do something a little bit different, and it didn't work. Now, I hope that Winston is now going to ring in again, because we tried talking on Skype before the show started, and to try and hold that open so that Winston would still be on, and it obviously does not work. So, right, I'm just telling now on show, can you phone in? I'm just asking, right, I've just asked Winston to right. So Winston's now gone off, and we should be okay. My apologies for that, but Winston was trying to try something different now, and it hasn't worked because he has difficulty coming in on Blog Talk. He can't get signed in on Blog Talk for some reason, and he's now going to hopefully phone back in, so we should be there. Apologies, we've just lost 15 minutes of the show. I'm sure it'll be okay. So we got Winston Shrout back on today, and what I've asked Winston to do actually is to give us some easy ideas of how people can gain their own financial freedom. Hi, Winston, we're back on.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay.
Whoa, we won't try that one again.
Halfway around the world, and here we are.
I know. I mean, it's a miracle anyway, isn't it? And we should be grateful that we're on at all. I mean,
indeed. There you go.
And I truly believe that, because I don't know how all this magic happens, but I love it. Even when it goes wrong. I was
Certainly.
just saying that, what I'd asked you to do was give us some idea, because there's all this paraphernalia out there at the moment about ideas about how people are going to overcome this financial bondage, and I think it's really good to stay with our feet on the ground a bit, even though we know we're amazing spiritual beings as well, but we have agreed to be on this planet right now in a 3D body, so as well as being spiritual beings. So I'm going to hand it over to you to see how can we give people a good sort of standing in where to start with this.
Well, certainly some of the misconceptions need to be overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the main problem that people are experiencing in not being able to attain financial freedom, as they call it, is because they keep going into debt. If you stop going into debt, you're free.
Yeah. Well, that's
plain
true.
And simple. Now, first off, we live in a world that it's what we would call an illusion. Some people even refer to the physical world as a hologram.
Mm.
Now, whether it is or not, we still have to deal with what it is, and so. But if you understand, that the physical world, the third dimensional world, is an illusion, then it starts to make a little bit of sense, as to what it is that we're up against here. Now, when we start to talk about debt is another illusion. It's something that we conjure in our mind. And so one of the problems, certainly, that most people have with this concept is that once you give that illusion or that fiction credibility, then you introduce it into your reality. And so if you believe something, then for you, that's exactly right. Because when we start to talk about the fields and elements of quantum physics and some of those kinds of things, perception tunnels, and so forth, I think we've all agreed that we create our own world. And so if you have a world out here that you're creating and you're trying to manifest it, if you introduce elements into that creation, that would cause a defect in your world, then you're you can see the problems that come from that. So again, it's important for people to come back to the basic concepts of some of these issues, and the main one that is causing defects and cracks in the world that you are creating for yourself is, in fact, the thing known as debt. So, it's like everything else. If you want to be free, as people use that term, then eliminate debt and don't do it anymore.
And are you talking about that in a 3D sense, or your perception, of whether you're in debt or not?
Well, we'll go into the perception of debt here in a moment.
Yeah.
Because all commerce, in other words, all interaction between people in our present system is a fiction.
Yeah.
Now, as an example of that, when one man wants to do business with another man in a contract situation or an agreement or whatever, they have to create a medium of exchange. Now, when I want to talk to the spirits in the spirit world, who do I go to?
Yeah, a medium.
I go to a medium, for crying out loud.
I know.
And so in order for one man to do business or to have an interchange with another man, they have to set up a medium, which again is not a part of the 3D or the third dimension, but it's a method that we use to exchange energy one with another.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that all commerce is a fiction, in as much as in order to have an exchange of energy one with another, then we have to create a medium of exchange. And so, I know it might be, to most folks that will hear this for the first time, they're probably scratching their head and trying to figure this out. But that's just the way that it works.
That's the truth of it, isn't it, really? That is the truth.
Yeah. Now, is that good or bad? It's not good or bad. It's just how it is. And so the main concern of all transactions, all contracts, agreements, and so forth is to make sure that there is an equal exchange using that medium. Now, if you go back into the former times, back into medieval times or whatever, that there were only two things. There was the rich and the poor.
Yeah.
Now, during a certain period of time, there rose up a merchant class. And so that merchant class started to develop a medium of exchange between the rich and the poor. And so now all of a sudden we have three classes, and that middle group, which was basically established by the merchants, by the trades, and all those entities and so forth, actually acted as a medium of exchange between the rich and the poor. And so then the question gets to be, how do you accommodate an equal and fair exchange? And so the merchants developed something that was known as accounting. In other words, they would sit down on a piece of paper, enter certain things into their ledgers and so forth, and then they would use arithmetic to determine whether or not there had been an equal and fair exchange. And so that's just how it works. I mean, it's not scientific or it's not mystical or anything like that. It's just plain old common sense. So when you have, in today's world, where we're not so much concerned with the the feudal system and the medieval times and so forth, we still, when men and women want to make some sort of an exchange of energy from one party to the other, they have to create some sort of a medium for that exchange, and most people use money. Most people use money for that exchange. Other people do it, different ways and so forth. But still, the purpose of that medium, perhaps through the use of accounting and so forth, is to determine whether or not that there is yet a liability in that exchange. So the accounting would demonstrate the liability or the inequality or the unfairness or whatever, so that it could be rectified.
But what you had was like the merchants then ran amok, didn't they? They ran amok.
It appears to be so.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because I think if we had fair accounting where there was a fair energy exchange, but then what happened was the merchant class ran amok, because they also include the banking, which is just a service. It's just a merchant. It should just be a service, and it isn't, because now most of us, if I asked a couple of banks, they'd say that I owe them. I don't think I owe them. I've just walked away from it, but they would say I owe them. But that's because they used unfair practices and upped the ante on what their energy was worth as against what my energy was worth, if you like. And I mean, it all became false, didn't it, then? That's why we're all in so-called... I don't see myself in debt because I've actually just walked away from it and nothing's going on with that, so I'm not bothered by it. But they would say I'm in debt.
Yeah, what happened is that the merchants devised a method to become more powerful than the rich. In other words, they became more powerful than the nobility, in as much as they controlled all of the accounts, and they're the ones that actually held the wealth in many instances. So the merchants basically supplanted the source or the crown, or whatever you want to call the thing, in such a way that all of a sudden now the king is borrowing money from the merchants so he can go wage war. So in any event, that medium of exchange got way out of hand to the extent that it became more powerful than the king. It still is. So if we get down into our present circumstances, we have people, men and women, who desire to exchange energy in the form of goods and services and various other ways. And so the real question at this point, when we start to talk about what medium of exchange will we use when we undertake to exchange with one another. Now, so that's what has created the problem, I would say. And when we start to talk about the concept of debt as it relates to a medium of exchange, all of our currencies are in fact debt currencies.
Yeah.
And so in our transactions between one another, when we use their currency as a medium of exchange, then we have introduced debt into the equation. So now we have to go to the account to look at, the numbers on the page, on the spreadsheet, to determine how it is that we will balance the account and reduce it to zero, you see. So, nature, I mean, if you look out here at nature, water runs downhill, and you see all these natural phenomena that go on. And so this is the planet, this is the natural law that we're dealing with, and you will notice that the planet is always moving towards what we call homeostasis, which means all things being equal, or in their proper perspective. And so our financial systems, our transactions and so forth should mimic that process, whereas we're always trying to go towards harmony and balance. And the problems that we suffer with are because our accounts are in an imbalance.
Yeah.
That's what we call debt.
Yeah.
So
we're all in debt, and we all use debt all the time because that's all it is. Even the fiat, the normal the normal pound notes and £5 notes and all of that. I mean, it's all still carrying debt, isn't it? So how do we deal with this, being in this situation as we are?
Well, that's what we've been doing these seminars and so forth for so many years. Is number one, to educate folks so they understand. See, the currency itself, whether it's debt based or whether it's gold backed or silver backed or whatever, is no consequence because again, it is only a medium.
Yes,
it's a medium of exchange between people. And so what has happened is that the merchants, the bankers, or whatever you want to call them, have introduced a concept which is known as interest. Now, the interest is what's causing the people the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you would look at money as a commodity, it is a real thing. I mean, we got pieces of paper, we got coins, we got all these, we got diamonds, we got all kinds of things out here that people consider to be valuable. Now, so those are things, they're objects, and they have no intrinsic value in and of themselves, but they can be used to accomplish certain things. So it's a tool.
Yes.
Just like a hammer, just like a sewing needle. It's just a tool. Now, for the use of that tool, what shall be required? That's the only question. And so, as I mentioned, for the use of that tool, the bankers have devised the concept of interest, compound interest, all kinds of weird situations here. And so for the use of that tool, people get tricked into that world of interest and so forth, when in reality, there should be a set fee for the use of that tool. For instance, if I go out and build a building out here and I don't have a specific tool that I need, then I go to a rental agency that has that particular tool, and I go rent that tool for, let's say, 2 days, for which I pay that company a specific fee.
Yeah.
Now, why couldn't that not be incorporated into our banking thought process here? So if I need $100,000 to go out here and purchase, whatever, why do I involve myself in interest rather than simply paying a fee? You see. Now, if it was a fee situation, that would make more sense. But where you get this compound interest foolishness running off, there's where you get into the problems. And so when you introduce interest into a debt currency system, then you see the result of it.
And I mean, we all agreed to do it. I look back and think, well, the day I took on a credit card and I took on loans and I took on all this stuff, that's the day, and particularly in mortgages where people end up paying twice the price of the house. I mean, it's all crazy, but people do it because we don't have access to, I mean, one of the main things I think that's a huge problem is we no longer have access to land, because land is where life is, and if you don't, like, I don't own anything. I have a beat up old car that cost me £100. I don't own property. I don't own land. So when you're like that, you're totally at the mercy of others. I rent a house, but I have to pay the rent in order to grow veg on the garden. So that's where we lost our sovereignty. We lost it back in the day.
Hold on a minute, because you're using terms here that I think you might not be properly conceptualizing of.
No, probably.
The word, I agree with you. Yeah, the word own. Now, let's talk about that word, because people I think, are misconstruing what that word means. The first concept that you have to understand about ownership implies liability.
Yes.
And you know, where you say, I don't own anything, I agree with you. Let somebody else own it. I don't really care. I just want the use of it.
And that's how it is. I mean, the American Indians, you know, the indigenous people all over the world, they all see that you could never own land anyway. I suppose I'm just using it because it's how we say it today. But in my heart, if you ask me from my heart, you know, I would say that you can't own anything because we're just here temporarily in this body, in this life right now.
Well, the proof of it is, if everybody would simply pull up their shirt and look at their belly button or their navel and realize that we are all created beings. I did not create myself.
No.
Therefore, I owe a certain allegiance to the Creator, who is, in fact, the owner. But again, the owner has the liability, which has been fulfilled, because the owner has provided to me the use of the land, the plants, the rocks, the trees, the gardens, and all these kind of things while I'm here upon this planet. So the owner, or what people call God, has in fact fulfilled his liability in this matter by providing us the opportunity to live.
And then we got the hijackers who hijacked it all and said it was theirs.
Well, if the government wants to say they own the land, I say, you know, God bless you. Go ahead and own it, but now you have the liability, and so go ahead and own it.
But you know, Winston, there's an interesting thing here because over the years, you see, you've got a lot of people who now own the land. You've got people who were just normal people, and they now own land, and they've made it big, as they would call it, and they own land. And you can't now walk on their land. I mean, we've got a horrendous mutation of life.
Let's go back to that thought process there. Because you do have some organizations, some corporations and so forth called government that claim that they own the land. Okay, that's fine. If you want to claim that you're the owner of the land, you can go ahead and claim that, and you can be the owner. But I claim possessory use.
Yeah.
As the beneficiary, and the proof of it is that I have a navel.
But how are you going to do that? See, I love that. But how practically are you going to be able to live? Like here, you can't even pitch a tent in the UK anywhere unless you pay a fee to put your tent up. I mean, you couldn't even put a tent up on the roadside. Do you know what I mean? Because that's how it is. So even if I lifted up my shirt, which they'd all be very pleased about, I'm sure, and said, look, there's my navel, they would cart me off to the psychiatric ward.
I don't think so.
That's been done here. I mean, there have been people who've been, you know, come forward with all the Freeman material, and some of them have gone really they've really got hold of it, and they've really run with the fact that they're sovereign and free, and then they've been put in a psychiatric ward because they've said it to the wrong people at the wrong time. I mean,
let's go back to some of those terms there. I mean, I keep hearing words, you know, being used and bantered about by various parties, various organizations, and so forth, and I wonder, you know, do they understand the words that they're attempting to use in their conversation? See, the problem is with us, with mankind, is that we think in words.
Yeah.
Which is a problem because our ability to think and use reason and logic then is restricted to the words that we use and understand. And so I keep hearing the word, you know, words like free, free man. I keep hearing the word sovereign bantered about and so forth. Can anybody prove that they're any of those things? And the answer is no, they can't. And so we create a delusion when we start to make those claims to ourselves. For instance, the only thing that I can biologically prove, through DNA and all that kind of stuff, is that I am a physical entity, which is a man.
Yeah.
There's only two things, with a few variations in between, I realize, but we have men and we have women. That's what we have. Now, from time to time, because of our vanity, we start to take on certain attributes that we think that will gain us some sort of an advantage over other people. So that's why I'm very hesitant to use any kind of term like free, free man, free woman, sovereign, whatever, because I can't prove it. There's no way to prove that because, number one, it ain't true, but aside from that, it can't be proven. And so we're making claims that are unsubstantiated. And so if somebody asks me, when people ask me all the time, Winston, are you this? Winston, are you that? Whatever. Well, no, I'm not any of those things. They say, well, what are you? I said, I'm a man. I can prove that. But I can't, even though I act like, a free man, or I act like a sovereign, or I act like an American, the only thing I can actually prove is that I'm a man. So I stick to that, and things seem to work out a little bit better.
And also, it's about how you live, isn't it? It's about how you live.
Sure.
You see, because I would say that a lot of the time I feel very sovereign in how I perform and act and live in my life, because I involve the spiritual side, I involve the magic of life, which I love, the synchronicities, the energy, the vibration. If I raise my vibration, all sorts of things happen around me which wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have raised my vibration. So I live with that, but I know within the world that I still have to walk out my front door and activate with other people who don't live the same way as me. I also, because I don't have inherited wealth, then I have to somehow get my food every day. I haven't become a breatharian yet. I'm working on it. But I have to get my food every day. I have to feed my cat. I have to put clothes on my body. So it's like, in that way, I'm only as free to be able to eat as I am free, or as I am able to acquire some fiat money. If I don't grow the veg in my garden, I have to pay my rent in order to. So I'm looking at, I keep hearing all this stuff out there about how people are going to become free and how the financial system is going to change and all of this. But, I mean, day-to-day reality is what people want to hear about. And they want to hear about, is there anything they can do? Like, I know about the magic. I've listened. I mean, I keep listening to bits of Opt and then having to turn the computer off, because I can't stand them just talking about 5D, because actually we've got a merging of, like, we're in the 3D, but we're capable of pulling in higher energies and working with the magic. Now, we've known about that for the whole time that the Earth's been here, I'm pretty sure. But you've got to deal with the 3D with the 5D. So what I'm looking for is, how can we help people, work with the fact that we are in a physical body. I do still need to eat. I do still need to pay my rent. Am I going to be able to do that in some way that is different to me, working really hard to make the rent, or getting the benefits from the government to make the rent? Or what is there another solution where there is a loophole here or a twist in it? Is there, because people will want to know. I think, when you say people ask you, are you sovereign? They've already asked me to ask you certain things. I've had emails, and I think, somebody said to me, are you free? Have you recovered your straw man? Did you get all your money back out of that so-called account? I certainly haven't done anything like that. But, I mean, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a way of not living in the so-called normal slavery position that they're in right now. And I teach them all the time the magic of life, where you do intend and you can do it. But I can't. I'm no saint. I'm not sitting here with the magician's wand. I'm not doing that for my food, and nor is anybody else that keeps talking about all this stuff. So we know it can happen when you're in that high state and, and magic happens around you. It's wonderful. But what about day to day for the person who is just awakening and they know that it's not going very well for them in their freedom state of being a creative, inspired human being? They're having to work like crazy just to get paid the rent. Is there any remedy there for that?
Well, of course there are. That's what we spend so much time doing these seminars and so forth to explain. Here's the situation that I have to deal with as an educator.
Yeah.
And that is, I have to take people at whatever level, they are to explain things. Now, I kind of look at this kind of like the steps in a stairs. You have some portions that are vertical. You have some portions that are horizontal, and you go up until finally you reach whatever platform you're trying to go at. And so when people come to me and say, "Well, Winston, I have a question about this or that," first thing I have to do is determine what step they're on that particular climb. And if they're just starting out on that climb, then I know what I should say. And if I determine that they're operating on the third or fourth or fifth step up, then I know what to say. And so, unfortunately, because I'm saying all these things publicly, all people at whatever step they're on hear it, and then I think there may be some confusion that may result from some of that. For instance, someone who has never heard any of this information before, in other words, they haven't even started to climb yet. When they hear me talking to someone on the third or fourth step, it's very easy for them to become confused.
It sounds like madness, doesn't it? I understand that. It definitely sounds like madness when you haven't gone through it all. See, what I think of here is in that last show we did, you gave so much information. You talked about the straw man, the birth certificate bit. You did a bit on that because somebody called in about that. You did the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, and how that is all set up with the world commerce and how it operates and why. And then you did the trust, because lots of people were hearing all about the OPPT trust at the time, and you were talking about different trusts and what to be aware of there. So I think what we get here, and certainly on my network, we get a lot of people who have woken up. They do know about the straw man. They might have tried a few things for themselves. They know that their birth certificate is the kind of, I don't know, is that the control point of the straw man? I think, well, that's the beginning of the straw man entity, isn't it? The fiction. That's their entrance into the fiction as soon as the mother puts the child on a birth certificate. So they know about that.
It's actually a continuation of the fiction.
Right.
That being, again, if you go back and realize, that the third dimension, what we call the physical world, is in fact an illusion, then all these things we're talking about here is simply a continuation of that same illusion. Now, I hope people don't get me wrong here, and the main thing that stands in front of people realizing that, again, is their fear of death.
Yes.
They don't know what's coming, and so they cling on to the physical world as if it is all that there is. And
it makes you play the game less, doesn't it? See, I see that. I think play the game well within the holographic illusion that you've agreed to come down into, and play it with no fear that you're going to come out of it at some point, because you should never have a fear of that. And I totally agree with you on that level. I love that level of looking at it. But when we're in this game, how are we going to become really good at playing this game for our benefit?
Well, there we go. When you talk about, am I doing this for my benefit? See, it goes into the concept, and this is a spiritual concept or a philosophical one, which has to do with either service to self or service to others.
Yes, absolutely.
So those two concepts immediately come up, and so when we're more concerned with serving ourselves, then we go down a certain path, and when we talk about service to others, we're going down a certain path. So what we're trying to find in the middle there is to harmonize those two concepts so that all parties are satisfied, with life and the things that go on here. So,
and I totally agree with you there. I mean, even though again, it's this use of these words, isn't it? Because I'm somebody who says frequently on my radio show that until the last person on this planet is totally fed, warm, and taken care of and living a creative, inspired life, then my job isn't over. Because I've always seen it like that. I cannot believe that we have people on this planet who are not fed, not warm, not living a creative, inspired life. And we do have that situation. So I see it that we are here for the service to others because we're all one. But what I know is at the times when I've been virtually homeless, and not had money for food, I've not been very good for others either.
Well,
do you see that? So
yeah.
That's what I know. I know that I don't need much to live. As I said, I don't own anything. So what I do need to be able to do is to have a roof over my house, though. I'd find it pretty difficult if I didn't have a roof over my house at night. So that's why I say for our benefit, how can we, because I certainly don't want to, and I've managed to do this for years. I've never worked a normal job for the last 40 years because I've managed to work with the magic and what I wanted to do and my own power in that, my own responsibility. So I'm not your normal person, but I do know that there's a lot of people out there who are just awakening, who need help with how do they start to change the fact that they did think that they were slaves and they have lived that life. Because I'm not normal, and I don't think you are either, Winston, here. I think we've lived quite extraordinary lives in that way because we walked away from it. But what I'd like to be able to do is at least inspire a few people to start. And I feel like all of this, what we're talking about now, I think is inspiring for other people to see that even thinking beyond the box is the start, isn't it? But do you think that there are not any ways for people to gain themselves a bit of an advantage on all these, what do we call them, the warehouse men, the kind of traders who have taken all the supplies and the monetary value?
Well, yeah, there are solutions to that, and it sometimes it has to do with what's happening on the local level in your personal affairs versus what's going on internationally. Mm-hmm. And so what we've done with Solutions in Commerce is to try to bring it down to the local. What can you do to improve your situation? And then we're also dealing with some of the international things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So probably most of the people who are listening to this program would be interested in knowing what can they do individually to improve their circumstance. So probably we can address some of those things.
Yes.
Now, as I had mentioned, I had made a little bit of an illustration with the concept of the stairs, going up the stairs. And so at the very first, at the beginning platform, people must conceive of the idea that platform right there is pretty much wrapped up in service to self, which means that if you have nothing to eat, you have nowhere to sleep, so forth and so forth, then your main concern is securing those things so that you won't die.
Yes.
So, that's where a lot of people on the planet right now are.
They are,
yeah. We have found out through experience that you can't teach, the concepts on level, 3, 4, or 5 as long as somebody is hungry, has nothing in their belly.
I'm so glad you said that because that's so important for everything else, because of everything else that's going on with all these other groups and that, is that they are trying to ignore that. And this is so fundamental, isn't it? Because you're in a certain survival instinct at that point, aren't you? I've been there.
Yeah.
You know, not that many years ago, I was suddenly, I put myself in that situation. I could see how I put myself in that situation by decisions I'd made, but it wasn't very pleasant, and it didn't allow me to help a lot of people for a while either. So that is the first thing to secure. So how would you suggest people do that?
Well, there's many methods depending on, exactly, what your circumstances, situations are. What we would like to get to is the concept of is non-cash.
Uh-huh.
So maybe I can launch out. We've been talking about a lot of philosophical things here for a good while. Let's launch into practicality now.
Mm-hmm.
Which the basis of all capital, you understand capital itself, what it actually means. Capital refers to anything outside of your own immediate body. For instance, if I have a shovel that I can dig a garden with, that shovel is capital.
Capital, yeah.
If I take that shovel and dig a garden, plant seeds, and have a return on my labor, that's also capital. And so as we labor, as we work, as we infuse energy into a project, whether it be gardening or whatever it is, then the result of that is going to be something for which we expect a beneficial use. So the question is, what is the most important commodity that the people on the planet have? And that commodity is, in fact, the ability to labor.
Yes.
The only question that comes up in all these circumstances is, who is the beneficiary of my labor? Is it myself, or is it some organization, the members of whom do not labor and simply try to get their sustenance from the labor of others? Now, so that's been the real problem when we start to deal with governments, agencies, taxing agencies, and all those kinds of things, is who has the right to the products, proceeds, fixtures, and so forth that come from my labor. I'm saying that it is me, that I get to determine what happens to those products. However, there are certain organizations which say no, that the results of your labor is strictly under our direction, and we will determine what will become of your labor. Now, see, that's the situation that has gotten a lot of the people onto the planet into the circumstance that they're in right now. So our work then, our education and so forth, is to bring those things to people's attention, to show them how to deal with those kind of situations, because these organizations do have guns, and they will kill you if you don't, if you resist them.
Yeah.
So we have that circumstance. Unfortunately, we have that circumstance on the planet, and so we're trying to find viable methods and means so that people can exist on this planet and fulfill whatever destiny that they conceive, that they're here for, and without being prevented from their destiny by someone or some agency, some organization which is bent upon their destruction.
But do you know what? There is always there is always a choice to that. And I think the education is about getting people to choose differently, isn't it? Because you don't get, well, at the moment, you don't get bound and shackled and taken to work in a factory or taken to work in an office or into the stock market. You go by choice to work for an organization who uses your labor, your value, for their benefit much more than for yours.
Yeah.
So there is a choice, isn't there? There needs to be an education.
There's free will involved with all these things. But so what we try to educate people upon is the concept of cash versus non-cash, or what we call money of exchange versus money of account.
Yes.
Now, these are two important concepts that people have to get in their mind, because if you don't know the difference between the two, you are prone to believe what is told to you. And so the governments or the agencies or whatever are trying to convince people that they need to give them cash or equity money, or what we call money of exchange, whereas they cannot require you to do so. The only thing that can be required of any individual who participates in the system is to balance the books. And we balance the books by the use of non-cash items, or what's called money of account.
So so if we're going to take this into a practicality again, so this is like a carpenter doing a job for somebody. Now, are you talking about people working with other people, exchanging and using a currency? Are you talking about using coins, or yeah?
Or you could talk about, exchanging commodities.
Yes, commodities,
For instance,
or energy hours.
Yeah, I might come and paint your house in exchange for a dozen eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with a lot of stuff like that, like real systems that are, throughout a whole community, and it's been wonderful. But it's not taken off the way I thought it would, I have to say. It's actually gone down in the last few years as to the amount of people.
That's probably because people are trying to interject other commodities. For instance, they have a mixed system.
Yeah.
And so, and so they're what they're probably doing is they're trying to introduce modern accounting procedures in that, whereas it's actually a warehouse situation. And so the accounting at that point is not reduced to numbers; it's reduced to real things. And so, for those kind of systems to succeed, they have to go into the warehouse mentality of accounting rather than reducing things to numbers, because just as soon as you introduce numbers, you introduce fictions. Mathematics is a fictional situation.
No, I mean,
so that's probably why they have problems.
Yeah, well, not problems so much as just people not coming forward and opening new groups and more people joining. I mean, the originals are still there. The original people who were involved, a lot of them are still doing it, but they're in very small groups in a town. You might get 50 people in a town, or 100 if you're lucky, who are involved in that sort of trading. And it's very good. I mean, I've been involved in it, I was involved in it for years. There's not one where I'm living now. I'm thinking of getting one going again, but you can do it amongst friends. But we're actually talking about bigger movements of this, aren't we, where more people are involved, because we do need plumbers, electricians, we need all sorts going on, people who grow food, But do you think that's the way? Do you think we're going towards, I think we're going towards the way of the heart. If I'm honest, ultimately we're going towards the way of the heart, where it's just going to be natural for people to share what they have, and everything should be shared amongst people, and nobody's going to be eating too much, nobody's going to be hoarding it. That's the way of the heart, but we're not there yet by any manner or means. So,
there has to be a balance between service to self and service to others. You can't be extremely one or the other.
No, but we're very much away from everybody being service to others, aren't we? I mean, I'm being truthful about this. I don't know many people who live or act that way. I tend to be a bit of a hermit because of that, because I'm a bit of a weirdo to other people. But, and I know I've got a few friends who are the same. But in that general world, once I walk out there, I have to be aware of the system that they're running. And that's, I wonder what's the transition here, because do we start cultivating more of the trading and the bartering and the sharing, or is there more to this transition? Because we need a transition state, don't we? We need a corridor to join us up.
Well, your example of a hermit is an extreme case of service to self.
Well, I'm not totally a hermit, otherwise I wouldn't be talking to all these people online. And I actually do see people, and I trot around, and I talk to everybody when I'm out, because that's just me. But I do have to come back home, because sometimes the energy out there is not as open.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to this concept of the different situations with money of exchange versus money of account. Now, and it gets down to the concept also of original issue. This is a concept that people need to understand. When we talk about original issue, we're talking about the product of labor.
Yes.
And so, for instance, if I go out here and raise a garden and I produce a bushel of tomatoes, now, that's called original issue.
Yeah.
If I reduce that bushel of tomatoes to some numerical value, such as $20 or 20 pounds or whatever, now I have created a fiction. If I use the king's currency, whether it be pounds or Federal Reserve notes or whatever, in other words, when I register the bushel of tomatoes into the public commerce, and reduce it down to the king's money, then for the use of the king's money, there is a tax affixed, which is only reasonable. Now, so when we start talking about exchange, money of exchange, we're talking about some medium that represents my labor. So money of exchange has equitable value.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, we talked about money of account. Money of account is only numbers that are upon a ledger. In other words, they are not the result of labor. They're the result of simply bookkeeping entries. That's all that they are. Now, let's give an example. Let's give an example of this I think everybody's pretty much familiar with, and that is when they go to do a real estate purchase. When they go to do a real estate purchase, they will sign a note, and a note is a promise to pay. It's not the payment in fact, but it's a promise that a payment will be made at some time by some party. Okay? Now, the bank takes that note in and they monetize it. But again, because the note hasn't been redeemed by the labor of the party who made the note, then whatever numbers that the bank puts on its books is simply money of account. It's only bookkeeping ledger entry. That's all that it is at that point. So then the party who does the purchase of the real estate, who gives their note, then their responsibility is to redeem that note. But what does the bank do? The bank comes back out with their money of account and then redeems the title to the property so that you can have possession of the property. And they did all of that with money of account. And then the bank has the audacity to come back to the maker of the note and say that we want for you to redeem all of this money of account by giving us money of exchange. Now, there's where the fraud comes in, because the bank has leveraged the whole process in such a manner that they are creating interest.
Yeah.
So, if people can get their minds wrapped around, now that's a simple explanation of a typical mortgage situation. I mean, there's much more that can be talked about in that situation, but
it's complete fraud, and a lot of people know that now, but they're still paying their mortgages because they don't want to be homeless.
Yeah. Okay. Well, because they don't know how to stand. But anyway, let me give you another example that might be understandable. and this is how the court system, and I would recommend a particular article. Actually, it's a small book that you can get on the internet.
Yeah.
The name of that is called Dispatch of Merchants.
Yeah.
Dispatch. Dispatch of Merchants. Yeah.
Maybe somebody can write that in the chat room for us. Great.
Yeah, by Bill Avery. You can get it on the internet. It's all over the place. The reason I bring that particular item up is because Bill Avery had demonstrated how the court entices or forces you to convert a court judgment into specie. In other words, paying with money of exchange.
Yes.
So it's kind of a reverse bank. You understand that a court is only a bank. That's all that it is.
Yeah.
And so let's say, for instance, a complaint for money owed comes into the bank. Now, that particular complaint is a negotiable instrument under negotiable instrument law. And but again, what the numbers that are on the complaint, what are they? Are they money of exchange items or are they money of account? And the answer is that they're money of account. It's only a bookkeeping, a ledger entry. That's all those numbers are. So let's say the complaint comes in for $100 or £100. Okay, so those are numbers on the ledger. Now, if the attorney is successful in his court case, as it were, the judge is going to come out with a judgment.
Yeah.
Now, the judgment, most people are confused about this judgment, and that is they think, because of the mistakes that we're all under, they think that the judgment should be paid in money of exchange. But that's absolutely not true. What went into that case? Money of account. What should come out of that case? Money of account, you see. And so people, for instance, they get a traffic ticket, and so they get a complaint filed against them in a court, which again is only numbers written on a piece of paper. They get a judgment against them, and the judge says you got to pay $100. And so people automatically think that they need to come up with money of exchange, or what we call specie, in order to satisfy that judgment. But folks, let me tell you right up front, if you give money of exchange in any kind of instance where money of account is required or is actually due, then you have not adjusted that account.
Right.
It's the illusion.
But if you get so Winston, if they go to court and you've got, say you're going to court because you've not paid your mortgage, because that's what you were talking about there. There's a payment missing. So what can they get away with there? What can they do as remedy there then? When the judgment says, right, well, we're saying that you do owe this money, the judgment is that you owe us $100. How are they going to get remedy?
Well, one of the things we do here in the United States, because of our Constitution, and that is, under the Constitution, only gold or silver are allowed in payment of debt. So what we do, we put the judge on the spot. So the judge said, okay, says you owe $100 over here. Now, we know that judge has sworn an oath to the Constitution. So we say to the judge, will you authorize us to pay that $100 in anything other than gold or silver? If he says yes, what did he just do? He created treason against the Constitution. And treason against the Constitution, the only penalty for that is hanged by the neck.
So does he ever say that by mistake?
So if you go out, I don't know what the circumstances are in England or other places as far as, but anyway, in the United States, the Constitution prescribes gold and silver. Judge says $100, and you say, okay, will you authorize me to pay that in anything gold or silver?
And what does he say?
First off, they won't. They won't do that.
No.
and because they know that would be treason against the Constitution, which they're, for whatever reason, they're still in fear of. But in any event, that's just a real easy, simple, thought process there.
So do you get away with that? Come on, how many people have done that? Right.
Well, yeah, we do it all the time. Or some of
And that's all you have to say. Okay, that's good. That's for the United States then. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a friend down in Georgia years ago, and he went in to the taxing agency supposedly to pay his tax on his automobile.
Yeah.
So he went into the clerk there and said, "Will you authorize me to pay this tax in anything other than gold or silver?" And she said, "Well, I don't know." And finally, the county attorney came out. The county attorney said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I'm kind of confused here." He said, "Will you authorize me to pay this tax in anything other than gold or silver?" And the county attorney said, "Well, yeah, check, money order, whatever, cash. We'll take all those things." So my friend was prepared. He said, will you sign this affidavit to that effect?
Brilliant. And he didn't, obviously.
He did. He did.
Oh.
He did.
He just didn't know his stuff then.
Yeah, my friend was thinking about it for a minute. He said, so he went in and talked to the county judge. And he told the judge the circumstance, and then he said, yeah, and said the county attorney here even signed this affidavit saying I could do that. And the judge said, "You're kidding me."
Well, that's brilliant.
So my friend said, I want you to prosecute this guy out here for the crime he just committed. And Judge, no, I said, "I'm not going to do it." He said, "Well, then I'm demanding my opportunity to bring these charges before the grand jury." And so eventually he got into the grand jury at that point, and he said that he spent about 2 hours explaining to them about money. But he said that particular grand jury was in recess, and so they called a new grand jury. So he would have had to start it all over again.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have these circumstances, and again, because the people, whether it's just common folks like you and I, or whether it's people that actually work for the government in capacity as attorneys or clerks or whatever, bankers or whatever, all the people need to be educated on these things so that we don't keep creating these commercial crimes against one another.
Yeah, and so that we don't go along with the illusion that they've created. They're not even saying the words.
Not they, we have created.
Well, we have created it because we go along with it.
Yes, you have. You created the illusion when you gave credibility to it. Don't blame them, blame yourself. When you give credibility to a fiction, you can only blame yourself for the outcome. So,
and I know personally, I told you last time about 2 things that I'd done. One was get off a bill of $18,000 just by something I said. I just said it because I felt like saying it, and it got me off $18,000 court fees. But another time was because I asked questions instead of answered questions, and they got me out of court by ending the case and getting me out quick. Now, I got that before I ever knew anything about you. This was about 6-7 years ago, and I only heard about your stuff about 6 years ago. But I know that there are people who there are people. There's a guy just gone to jail. A guy called something Cody. He was an attorney, and he was trying to educate people, and they somehow set him up, and he's now in jail for 27 years. So this is you've got to be pretty daring to do a lot of this, Winston, because sometimes it can turn on you. Like I know guys who've gone into court and not answered to the name. And
okay, now stop a minute. Stop a minute. If this fellow was an attorney, he had taken an oath in regards to that responsibility, and when he did not fulfill his oath, that's why he went to jail.
Right, now you got that. Now I see that, because he should have given his card back before he'd started doing it, shouldn't he?
Absolutely.
That's the way. Yeah, no, he should have given his card back.
The scripture says that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways.
Well, it's going against your contract that you made. You first got to rescind the contract, haven't you? You've got to make good the contract. I agree with that.
Let me make this statement here so that people will understand this. All of our court system at present, with few exceptions, is an admiralty jurisdiction. Now, there are only two reasons why anyone can be sent to prison in the Admiralty.
Right.
Number one is contempt of court, and number two is breach of fiduciary responsibility.
Now, you're going to have to explain both of them to me, because I don't know exactly what either of those mean.
Well, I was trying to explain why this attorney went to jail.
Right.
Was because he had a fiduciary responsibility to whom he had sworn an oath.
Yep.
And in consequence of his breach of that fiduciary duty, the Admiralty Court put him in jail.
Right.
That's why, and for no other reason.
So when you say fiduciary commitment, you said, did you something like that? Is that so? Anybody who's made a contract with the system, within the justice system, is that what you're talking about then?
Yeah. Well, see, here's the problem: is that everybody have been induced to contract, which is all, of course, fraud. But until you recognize the fraud, it's the reality for you.
Yeah, so you've got to walk away in whatever way that means, depending on the situation.
Well, it's not just walking away, it's also settling the accounts. You cannot expatriate from a contract if there is a liability against you. That's why we're using acceptance for value and many of these other technologies and so forth, because we're trying to redeem the people, from their own folly.
Yes.
But in order to redeem them and to expatriate them away from a particular situation or contract, then we have to adjust the accounts. And we do that by using what kind of money? Money of account.
Yeah.
So in a practical sense, from a teaching or from an educational point of view, this explanation of the different kinds of mediums of exchange that occur in commerce, whether it be money of exchange or whether it be money of account, it depends on the situation that you're dealing with.
And do you know, Winston, the more you talk about this, you've really got to know what you're doing. I've always said that to people. I mean, I've got away with it just because I was talking from the heart, and I got away with enormous stuff twice in court.
Stop saying get away from.
All right,
You adjusted the account. That's why you quote unquote got away from it.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to say that from now. I adjusted the account twice. But I did it by intuition. I didn't do it because I knew anything. That was the amazing thing. What I'm trying to do now, I know, and it was great. But what I'm trying to do now is even pre-warn myself or pre-prepare myself by knowing more. Because what you've just said there, it concerns me sometimes that some of the things I'm doing, I don't know the consequences of, but you've put it really clearly there for me and everyone.
Let me plug something here for a minute for all your listeners. Go on our website, which is WSSIC.com. Look at the products list, and I did a single topic DVD on money of exchange, money of account. Get it, study it, understand it.
Yeah, that's the first one to start with then, really, is it?
Well, it's certainly one that would give people a lot of understanding about this situation, because we get into some of these technical, what people call technical areas. For instance, we got this stair-step thing I was talking about a minute ago.
Yeah.
And people are someplace on that stair-step as far as knowledge, and then a circumstance comes up, and do they have the knowledge to deal with that? And I get a lot of phone calls from people that don't.
No, I know. And I would say to people, for God's sake, raise your own vibration and get into knowing yourself a bit more, because that's the thing that's helped me out. I mean, I can't teach that. I can teach people to shed some of what isn't them, and that's what I do. But really going inside yourself and getting real with yourself and the situations you put yourself in is the starting point, because it certainly was for me. I should never have been in that court. I should never have had the bill of $18,000, but I did, because I got myself into the situation. But,
Well, it doesn't make any difference, the amount of the situation. In for a dime, in for a dollar. it don't make any difference when you're talking about money of account because it's only numbers on a piece of paper. And so how do we settle those accounts? We give them another piece of paper that has the exact opposite, whether it's an asset or a debit. So we just simply give them another piece of paper and authorize them to go ahead and settle and adjust the account. That's all that it is.
So if we know the procedure there, we can do that with all sorts of things that come to us within the system. Yeah, right. So because
Absolutely.
I know people do that. I put no contract on things like parking fines and stuff like that. But recently I've stopped doing that. Is that a mistake? I've stopped replying to it. I just don't reply anymore. Is there a difference between me putting no contract and sending it back? Because some people say there is.
That's fine if you want to do it that way. Again, it's all an illusion. There's no reality to it unless you give credibility.
I know, and it's only sometimes when the next bit of mail comes through the door that I even think about it at all, because I do see it like that. And I've got lots of things that I'm now not a part of in that way, but sometimes the mail keeps coming. They keep trying to drag me back into it. But I'm wondering if, even with a simple thing like a parking ticket, what I used to do was put no contract on it. Now I do nothing. But is that a problem if you do nothing? Because I've heard people.
What kind of illusion have you built for yourself?
Yeah, well, I feel like I don't even want to play. No. You see, that's how I see it now. I think, I've done that bit. I've done the no contract bit, writing on it. I don't want to. What can we say? Negotiate with them at all anymore. So I don't answer any of it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
So now you have pierced the corporate veil, and your illusion is different than it was a time back.
Well, I've maybe gone up one step or half a step, or raised my leg to go up, because it's all very interesting. I know, when you were talking about the oath and the oath, and also there is they swear an oath in America. You were talking about. And they swear an oath to the Constitution, and the Constitution says that you cannot pay in anything other than gold or silver, right? So in England, we have an oath. They all the police and the judges, I did have it written down, I haven't got it in front of me, but they swear an oath to the Queen. Now the Queen swore an oath to her people. No.
She swore an oath to God to be a defender of the faith.
And did she not see in that? Have you seen that? She
swore an oath to the people. She never swore an oath to the people.
I thought in that she swore an oath to the people as well, to take care and protect the people.
But the oath is to God, not to the people.
I must look that up then. So because people have used that, like a judge swear. They'll ask the judge, are you on your oath?
Let's get down to it here. The people are God, so there you go. That'll cover all your logic there.
I see that. No, I see that totally. So, right. So that doesn't make any difference then, because
not really.
Certainly we had one judge that ran out of the court when this guy went into court with a load of people and the first thing he said to the judge who was asking him to pay his council tax was, "Are you on your oath today, sir?" And the judge said everything but wouldn't say yes. And eventually they did a civilian arrest on him for impostering.
Yeah, I saw that on the internet.
Yeah. Now, what happened was he ran from the court, the judge.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these things that we do in our public things that we do is simply to bring attention to certain items. And the reason that the fellow jumped up and run out was because his conscience had pricked him. People have to realize that the ultimate court is the court of conscience.
Yes.
So either we justify or we convict ourselves based on our conscience. And apparently this particular magistrate in question, his conscience told him to jump and run.
Well, it was under civilian arrest at the time. There was this hairy guy walking towards him who put his hand on his shoulder and did the civilian arrest. That's what made him run.
I understand.
But, it was a fun event to wake a lot of people up, and it did. It woke hundreds
that's great.
of people up.
That's really great, yeah.
But, okay, so we're getting down to... So is it just all about us carrying on doing what we're doing? Is we're working in little ways with all of this stuff? There is no big magic wand to stop to get people out of this system, is there?
No, you're in the system because you determined you wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Now, if you go back to the words of the master who was called Jesus, he said his advice to some was to be in the world but not of it.
Of it, yeah.
So we
I
operate in this world as an expediency, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we become a part of it. So these interchanges with our fellow man, at whatever level that we're dealing on here, we still deal with one another at a certain level and so forth. And so this education, that we try to bring to people's attention is so they can have harmony, fairness in all their dealings with their fellow men. And so the system that has been set up by certain parties and individuals would prevent people from having that equal exchange, would prevent people from having harmony in their dealings. For instance, when you're using the king's money, he jumps right in the middle of it and says, hey, there's a tax due on the use of my money. Yeah. And so is there really or is there not? And so what we try to do is to demonstrate in those situations what can be done to adjust the accounts with money of account rather than having to give up your labor, which is represented by money of exchange or equity money.
So what your teachings are doing on your DVDs and that, it will show people what paperwork to come forward with in order to equal the accounts and not give over cash.
Well, of course.
Yeah. Okay. That's good for people to know.
You have to understand that if you give into this, now let me follow through with this. When you give equity money into a fiction, it can only be considered a bailment. It's bail because it is illegal and unlawful to do what you just did, you see. Now, so the reason why it's called a bailment is because that's the bail you're putting up for having violated that law. Now, where does the bailment go? Where does the money of exchange go? In the United States, it's held in the CAFR accounts. Each organization, whether it be a local government or whatever, they have accounts that they put that money into, which is basically a suspense account. And the reason why it's called a suspense account is because nobody claims the money.
Right.
So you go and give cash on a non-cash situation. The corporation cannot hold that cash. They have to put it into a suspense account. In the United States, those suspense accounts are accounted for or reported on the CAFR, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. They will tell you all the accounts, how much money is in them, and so forth, and what they're designated for. Now, so again, I mean, the wealth of the people is being given up by the people, and the people cannot blame anyone for this problem except themselves.
You see,
now,
you see, but
the reason why I say they have to blame themselves is due to lack of education.
It is lack of education, just totally. Yeah. What I'm thinking here is what scares people to not do anything about the situation that they've got themselves bonded into, right? And it has to
do with two things. It has to do with mind control, and it has to do with programming.
Yeah, but now, if we look at the situation now, they're fearful that they'll either go to prison, have their house taken away from them, or their car, or whatever, or their children in some cases, if they do the wrong thing in court and they go against the court. That's what they're frightened of. So they've got to be educated.
Let's go to the counsel again that was given by the master.
Yep.
And he said that a perfect love drives out all fear.
Well,
so
I
when
think
somebody says,
I'm
afraid, it means to me that they are not in love.
And they're not. But Winston, we know a lot of people are not in the love state. We just know that, don't we? And I mean, I suppose it's the frustration of knowing that people need to do something about that, and they need to get themselves in the right state. But that doesn't just happen. A lot of people right now out there are saying, well, you just have this bit of paperwork and you read these words and then you're going to be there. Well, it's not. That's not how it happens. It happens when you have a realization, doesn't it, inside yourself. That's when it happens. And I think this is what we've got to make clear is there is a difference from people telling you that you just go out there with a bit of paper.
That's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose of what's called this ascension movement by all these light workers and so forth, is so that people will have a self-awareness.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of it. Once you obtain that self-awareness, then you can start to move into the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, or just wherever you want to go.
Absolutely.
But until you come to that self-awareness, you're going to be stuck in the third dimension, which is only an illusion, and the reason you're stuck in it is through mind control and programming.
Yeah, it is.
So
and
you
I mean,
have to break those things.
It comes. I'm glad we're talking about this because we're actually looking at across the board here the aspects of it and coming to the core of it, but in a practical way. It's a practical way. There's practicality about this, and then there's the inner awareness as well. The inner awareness kind of takes you beyond. Sometimes, because it did me. I mean, because I had nothing else, but I had self-awareness when I was in that court. I hadn't got a penny. I couldn't have paid him a penny of the 18 grand. But what I had was self-awareness to say the right thing at the right time. Unbeknown to me, really, it was a sort of surrender. So that is what will take you there every time. Now, if you start to get a bit of self-awareness and start to also educate yourself, there's a way of those two coming together, isn't there?
Certainly. Yeah. Like I say, you know, one of the bad things that's happened to people is public education.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what's called public education is exactly that. It's the public education system, whereas you are socialized to become a part of that system.
Yep.
Talking to my parents, my mother and father both, who were involved. You know, my mother was well educated. My father, he was 8th grader. That's as far as he got.
All right.
But in any event, the education system at the time they were in school was considerably different than what we have today. Today we're involved in socialization into a system rather than an education which deals with things that allow you to function properly in the public. So today, for instance, you know, my parents learned arithmetic in a certain manner. And today we've got, my goodness gracious, I can't even imagine how. And the system changes about every 2 years or so about how they approach the systems of mathematics and arithmetic and so forth. So we have these things that have changed certainly in a lifetime or two, and so people have to learn how to deal with that. Now, you know, the whole school system, and trust me, you know,
oh, definitely, I know that.
I was trained to do this.
Yeah.
I went to university. I was trained in mind control. I was trained in behaviorism. And so I can identify it immediately when I see it. And so the students that go to the public education system today are victims of mind control and programming.
Absolutely.
Now, you have to break away from that. You have to be a thinker. You have to have logic, reason, common sense, and all these things. And the best way to get started on that is go grow a garden.
Yes. Be at one with nature. That's the energy there.
You can't fool Mother Nature.
No.
If you screw up with Mother Nature, you're not going to get any beans or tomatoes. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So nature is not the fictional world that we're operating in commerce in. It's the real world. And so if you want to break out of the programming, if you want to break out of the mind control, I mean, if you don't have a plot of land to grow a garden on, grow some flowers on your window box.
Yeah.
It'll teach you the exact same principles.
Or tomatoes in your window box. Definitely. No, and I agree with you. I mean, there's people do need to do that, and this is really simple. This is simple stuff. This is simple stuff about getting closer to yourself, being who you really are, and allowing yourself to blossom, isn't it? You know, it's not only your tomatoes blossoming and your flowers, it's you. When are you going to blossom? When are you going to give yourself the time to blossom? You know, but we have a lot of people who are not even interested, Winston, in. I mean, this is so frustrating, isn't it? I know even within my own family.
It's because they're under mind control.
No, I know, and I've got 3 children out there like that. I mean, I've got 3 children who work in the Matrix, and they're loving it, and they're getting on with their families and everything. And I had them homeschooled for a bit, but I put them back into school, and it's up to them to wake up. But it is frustrating for people, because once you wake up, you want everybody else to wake up as well. And a lot of people are not at that point. It's kind of a myth that everybody's waking up. There are a lot of people who are enjoying being in that social system.
Yeah. Unless you are totally a sociopath, or what we call in America a psychopath.
Yeah.
Unless you're suffering with that mental condition, it is possible to wake up. It is possible to break out of that thought process.
Oh, definitely. It's possible, but you've got to choose to. You can't wake people up who are enjoying themselves out there. I mean, it's impossible to do that.
Well, hopefully people wake up before it's too late. I have so many people come to me and say, Winston, I got this problem over here, and I don't know what to do. You know, and it would have been better if they would have known what to do right from the start, rather than to try to play catch up.
Yes.
And so many people that call, sometimes it's kind of like, I make the comparison to a cancer surgeon. You know, I mean, he is constantly having to deal with terminal problems.
Yes.
Whereas, what would have happened if those people had been spending time with a nutritional expert?
Yes. Yes.
They never would have got to that cancer now, would they?
No.
And so,
no, I know.
So what I'm trying to do with the seminars is to be a nutritional kind of a guy.
And not the person going in terminally.
Yeah, so when people call me with that terminal stuff, I say, oh, my goodness, I wish you had spent time going to seminars, listening to the DVDs, talking to people, learning things, so that when we come to this point here, I'm not in the situation where I'm having to try to cure a terminally ill patient.
Yeah, that's so true. So it really, and I love what you. I had received your latest email and sort of mail out, and it included a bit about your gardening. You're calling it gardening. I love that, and I actually put that on the advert. I took your paragraph that you wrote about that, and that is about people. I did have it up on the screen, but because we had difficulties getting on, I took everything off the screen, so I can't see that now. But that was a lovely piece, because it's about people going inside and finding out who they are, doing their own gardening. And it's not gardening all the time on paperwork. It's gardening within yourself, isn't it? Getting to that point. And this is what people need to do, is start to educate themselves. So it definitely is a combination of education on what is going on in the world and how that system works, and the education of self. There's a twofold path here, really. Yeah,
it's a two-pronged thing. Some of the education that you get is for self-protection. Some of the education perhaps would be useful to help others.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, as I started out on this journey, I didn't know any more than the common man on the street. And so I started on my education program, and I learned a little bit about, a few things, and then I started to share with others. And it got to the point that we had a study group that was meeting once a week, and there would be sometimes as high as 25 or 30 people that would attend that. And boy, did I have to work hard to stay ahead of them. So I would have something for the next week. And so from that, I've gotten to the point where I am now that probably I understand basically most of the situations that most people would come up with and even beyond that.
Yeah.
And so what I do as an educator is number one, to bring all these things to light, and then produce technologies that I call Band-Aids and aspirins, which is simple little fixes or this or that, that would give the people time in a situation so they can catch up with themselves.
Yeah, and that's to do with mortgages. That will be to do with all this stuff that they've got involved with. Yeah, that's brilliant. When this gardening thing, was that a webinar? Or did I misread?
No, it's kind of a little private club, if you want to call it that we started some years ago, where individuals would be, advancing, learning more, right. And so what we did was we opened it up so that those members of that club, or whatever you want to call it, would have more access directly to me.
Yeah.
So we have conference calls, where people can pose questions. I answer those questions. We put them on the archive them so that new gardeners or even old gardeners can go back and review those particular questions, situations.
Brilliant.
And so it worked out real good, and I'm kind of pleased, with the results of it and so forth. So I think they just opened up membership in that just recently. You just have to inquire at the office, go on the website, get the phone number, call them up.
Yeah. And they've got, so you've got that where people who are really serious about educating themselves here can go into that. But also you've got also DVDs there for all different parts of it.
We got eight years worth of Winston.
Well, I mean, it's all great. I mean, that's where I started 6 years ago, reading it and couldn't believe or watching it, couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Yeah.
I thought this man's insane when I first heard what you were saying about the birth certificate, and then I looked at it and went into it and listened to a few more hours, and I knew you were right. And it's quite intriguing.
What we've done, just to give you a little insight into the business, is that we do seminars to raise the money to produce the DVDs.
Yeah. Because they cost a lot to do a run, don't they? That's the problem.
I'm not rich, trust me. And so in order to get the information out, we depend upon the participation, and the sale of the products. And when we get that, when we're successful in doing that, then we're able to spread the word much further, to more people and so forth and so on. So now, aside from the actual seminars and the things that we've done in the past, what we've done is to break it down into individual topics. For instance, I might do a single topic DVD, like I mentioned on that money of exchange, money of account.
Yeah,
I'm really surprised that more people have not taken advantage of that particular DVD because that's such an important concept. Anyway, what I've tried to do is break it down into select subjects. For intense discussion. And so for the people that go on the website, you'll see that some of the different ones are seminars. We'll have the topics, that are discussed in that particular seminar, and then also on the single topic DVDs, so forth, and you can look at those. Now, when we do webinars, for instance, a webinar will be on a particular subject, and then as a result of that webinar, we'll record it and create a single topic DVD on that one also.
Yeah.
So we've tried to put out as good a product as is possible, and people who've looked at the product say, wow, because when we started this endeavor, the organizer of it said, listen, if we're going to do this, we're going to come out with a good product. We're not going to come out with all these grainy videos of the make a good product. And so we do. Yeah. It's a very good product.
And I know, last time we had a lot of people who were saying they came on. We haven't had callers in. I think they're too fascinated with what you're saying, and they're willing to stay quiet.
We can have callers. Yeah, we can have callers if you like. We've talked here for a long time. Maybe.
Yeah, well, we haven't got. Yeah, well, I put that out on all the adverts that we would take callers after the first hour. But right now, we've not had anybody come in on the switchboard. I would see them if we did. But I think they're very interested in just listening what you're having to say, and certainly because you've gone into a lot more of the deeper aspects of this, not just the paperwork. So I think
no. I've gone into the simple aspects of this.
Well, it is the simpler aspect. Do you know, this is the whole thing, isn't it? It's like I had to learn not to say that I understood because I was standing under that person. That took me ages to learn to say I comprehend. I mean, there's a whole lot of vocabulary that we use in the wrong place, and
that's
for the
true.
wrong reason. There's so much. And I'm a great thinker about words. I love the whole idea of using it. Because there's a vibration about it when you use it in the right place,
I was going to say maybe you can make the announcement to people. If they do want to call in and ask a question, maybe you can tell them how to do it.
Yeah, no, they've got it all up on the top of the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, but
all right.
Yeah, and on the top of the page. But it is 01917-889-2283. And please ring in if you want to ask Winston anything in particular. We get a lot of people listen to your video. Do you know we've had, I think it's nearly up to 7,000 people listening to just the archives of the show. And we had a video of it, of our own, that went out on YouTube. And you did too, didn't you? I reckon we're up, in total, we're up to about 20,000 people listening to this.
Wow.
That's
great.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
We know that people are really and they play it over. They play it over because they're trying to get what you're really saying. And I think this is the thing about, I know when I'm, talking to people about meditation and the state they get from that and what that is about and how they meet themselves and heal themselves. I've been doing it for like 40 years, so it's real simple to me. And I know people, when I'm talking to them about it first, they look staggered sometimes when I say, well, there's, you'll feel this and this can happen to you, and what you'll be is like at peace, and they look at me like, whoa, I don't know whether I believe her or not. But people are like that about your stuff. You listen it. I mean, I remember the first time somebody said, I don't think I got off the computer for about 5 hours that night. I think I crawled into bed about, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because I kept thinking, this is insanity. This cannot be true. And yet something kept leading me on to listen to more and more of it. And, and then the next night I was on there again. But it was, you have to keep listening to it to get it because it's breaking through a level of mind control. It is.
Let me explain some of that. And that is, I'm speaking or teaching, from at the very least a fourth dimension.
Yes.
Now, when you first hear that, you may be listening to it on the third dimension, and as you listen to it more and realize and understand more, then you're starting to hear it on a different dimension.
Well, Winston, I have to admit here, I kept thinking in the first, when I listened to it first, I mean, I've always operated on a spiritual basis, right? I've meditated for 30 years, but I kept thinking, I just wish this guy had stopped talking about God, because occasionally you would bring the God word in, and I didn't want you to bring the God word in with the paperwork, right? And I remember thinking, just get off the God case on the Bible and I'll listen more, but I still listened. Because I got it in the end. I got why you were doing it. But I reckon there's a lot of people who do the same as I did. Because I wasn't I wasn't a church
people's
person.
Understanding of who and what God is. And you can't understand the ultimate God until you can, go up that stairs and get to that concept.
Well, until you understand that you, like you just said, we're all God. So, I mean, when you get that.
How do you get there? So you have to go through the process. You have to make your way up those steps. And so you were listening to it saying, well, she stopped using that word. Other people listen to it and say, please use the word more.
Well, oh my God, you would. And especially in America because, I've been sent to hell so many times by Americans because I don't follow any normal regimented side of that. I mean, I don't, and I never have, but I have a connection myself, and I know the connection through me, if you know what I mean. But I never went the religious side. I'm not even christened or done anything like that. So I wasn't into that bit. And I mean, a lot of people will send you to hell for that if you don't agree with that. But you have the essence of it there, in that you are looking at it in a slightly, even though you're using the terminology that they're used to, I don't think you're seeing it like they see it.
Probably not. I'm not a brainwashed, what you would call Christian.
No.
I'm a believer in truth, and whoever says that truth, whether it's Jesus, Buddha, Martin Luther King, or whoever, if
Absolutely.
they speak the truth, I agree with them.
Yeah.
And so if I quote Jesus or if I quote whoever, it's of no particular consequence. But what the quote is or what the truth is, that's the important concept.
That's the important thing. And you know that by resonance, don't you? It's not even what they're saying. You know it by resonance.
Of course.
Winston, we've got 10 minutes left, really, 10, 11 minutes. Tell us something about the world situation that you know.
What particular situation?
Do you know, at that point, it was 11:11. I love that because I love those numbers. It just came up on the clock at 11:11. I think we're meant to say something. I don't know, like the financial situation, because you have been involved with certain stuff there, haven't you? There's so much craziness about it all out there. And I mentioned a guy to you tonight, and...
Let me comment on that.
Yeah,
Jen.
come on.
Give an overview.
Tell us. Yeah, we got 10 minutes.
All indications is that the financial system is corrected. Now, it'll take a little while for it to, get all put in place and trickle down and so forth.
Yeah.
Have confidence, though, that the financial system is in order and it is being dealt with successfully. Now, number two. The next thing that is being worked on very heavily is the legal system. And yes, indeed, it is being corrected. We see it all around. But the whole judicial system in the United States is under sequester. And what that means is that some of the judges and so forth up the line who are in favor of constitutional law are, in fact, putting the pressure on in the background. So the legal system has been sequestered, and even to the extent, I mean, I was just talking to a fellow the other day who had talked to a U.S. attorney who said that he was on furlough. So he said, what does that mean? He says, I'm not being paid.
Yes. Because they've got very few funds, haven't they? Now, I just want to make this clear.
That's because we fixed the financial system.
OPPT are saying it's all because of them. I just want to make it clear. It isn't.
Well,
this is happening through... No, it's got nothing to do with OPPT.
I would not go too far to say that they have not helped.
I think everything's helped.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm always in favor of everybody doing as much as they can to help the situation. So I'm not going to criticize OPPT or anybody else that's trying to make a change.
Yes, but to say that they've done it all, is wrong, Winston. Wrong against all the people who've worked for years and decades on this. It's been the energetic change of decades. It is not opt. I mean, I just have to make that clear.
No. I think we pretty much determined that the last time we had a conversation.
Yeah.
But again, anybody that does anything to help the situation, I'm in favor of, and I thank them.
Too. Mm.
I mean, what if one guy or what if 2 or 3 people had to carry this whole thing by themselves? Certainly I don't. I mean, I have made a contribution in my own small way, and the contributions of many people have brought us to where we're at now.
Yeah, many, many, many people in all different facets of this, structure, trying to, change it for the good. There's been many different aspects of it, hasn't there?
Oh, certainly. And all the efforts of all the people who have made a contribution, they're to be thanked and to, and give credit to. I do. Yeah. It ain't about Winston. I mean, like I say, I think I may have had some small impact in certain areas. And I'm fairly certain that I have, and I'll continue to do so. I'm sure you have. As long as I have something that I can contribute.
But, I mean, this is interesting that some, what it is an awakening of even the people involved, which we knew would have to happen because that energy is riding through our planet and we're on the higher resonance. And it's happening to judges. I love it that they're looking at it and they want to work within a different spectrum now of truth.
There's some of them who always did want to have it that way,
yes.
but they had no support from us.
And the politicians have been the same. There has always been some politicians.
Politicians are a different breed of animal.
But there are some. There are some who've gone into it for the right reasons, and they've not had the support.
I would believe so. I would believe so. Yes, indeed.
But I mean, are we going to come out with? I mean, I'm asking this question, and in my heart, I know that there is an overrule here that will make it happen where people will have to live through the heart. So it's going to happen eventually. But I have a feeling that we may come up with something that, as things evolve over the next year or so, it won't be the full thing.
Think about this for a minute.
Yeah.
Stop waiting. Do it now. Live in the present. Don't look
Well,
to
I'm
the
living
future
in the now moment. I teach that. I run workshops on that. So But what I'm saying is that there is an evolvement here, and I don't think it's all going to be given to everybody at the same in one moment in time.
Well, that's correct. Yeah, everybody's on that stair step.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to work with your own evolvement of that, don't you? It's not financial system, the judiciary system will evolve as fast as you make it evolve in a way. I think it's a case of that, actually.
Well, there's a certain amount of pressure that's being applied due to the fact that the planet itself is moving forward, and so we have to keep up. And so that's why there's this intervention going on at this particular time, because, if in fact, the people on the planet do not change with the planet itself, then we'll be ejected.
Yes, that's how I
can't be here.
Totally.
You can't be here.
No, exactly. And if anybody wants to read the manuscript I was given 20 years ago with all of that information in, which includes all the religious whole thing, it includes everything that's been set up in the sort of system that we have been living in and how it all is going to change, then contact me for that on my network at www.universallyaware.ning.com, because that manuscript has it in from start to finish. And I totally agree with you there, that as the planet vibration changes and she rises up, then we have to vibrate on that level. And as we move to the next space within the galactic area that we're moving to, the energy cannot align with that unless it's on a high enough vibration. So I'm glad you brought that bit up.
Yeah. Well, we're not moving into that. We're in it now.
Well, we are, yeah. I think there's more to come, Winston, though.
Well, there's more to come, but as far as physically moving into the photon belt, we're there. We're already there.
I think there's
we're not waiting for the age of Aquarius to occur. We're already in the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, but there's a bigger wave of energy that is coming into the planet. The question
that people have to ask is, can I stay here?
Yeah, well, I know. That's the biggie. That's the biggie. There is an event coming where,
No, not an event coming. We're already there. The question is, can we stay?
I think there's a difference there in that there is a quicker wave or a higher vibrational wave that hasn't come in its fullness yet. I would say that. But there's
I agree.
Explaining this, isn't there? Because it's words that get in the way in a sense. I mean, we both know what we're talking about, but it's very hard to put this whole thing, because we're so much more than this voice. We're so much more than these words, aren't we? Ultimately, that it's very hard to put it all into.
What I was trying to get to in the conversation was, if I'm going to live in the present, then I can't be looking for the future. I'm already there.
Well, you got to, you have to, but I think even that's changeable. That now moment, right? There's something about the holographic facility of everything and who we are that I think we can't quite get. Well, I feel like I can't quite get to words within what I know is a possibility, and we're not in it yet. I'm not in it
Some
yet.
are and some aren't.
Yeah,
Quit saying this we stuff.
Yeah, but okay, I'm not in that yet, and yet I see
Okay.
myself as a total weirdo compared to a lot of people. So I know that a lot of people need us to be able to talk about it in a way that they're going to get it in some way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Honestly, I've listened to so much fluff recently, and so many people talking way beyond the people who are trying to listen to them that nobody's learning anything. And I think we have to meet that requirement whilst we're here. You know, we have to meet, if we're going to be educators, we have to, like you were saying, it is hard. You've got this staircase, and you're meeting people at different levels all the way up. You know, and with what you're doing, that is so true. But what I do is that I have to be able to meet them on in one way, meet them on whatever level they need me to meet them on.
Sure. That's
anyway,
better.
I've loved this, Winston, because we've really opened this up. I've not heard you do a show where we open it up into this, and I love it because this is straight where I like to be, where we're involving the whole spectrum here.
Well, great.
You know, and it's been absolutely brilliant and very useful for people. So just quick, give that website again, because I always forget it. What's your website?
It's WSSIC.com, which stands for Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce.
There you go, Pete. Well, you've got it from us. And Winston, we'll have you back again when you've got time, because I love this.
Oh, sure.
And we're moving it on. You know, we're growing this whole thing as we're doing these different interviews with you. It's been wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to play us out. I hope you've enjoyed it too.
Oh, I've had a great time. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Winston. I'll be in touch. Bye for now.
Okay. Goodbye.